Hey guys, welcome to Anime What Ifs? This is episode 3 of What If Naruto Married Temari. Naruto wandered downstairs to discover a thoughtful clone had picked up some cereal for him. Grumbling a bit at himself for forgetting to transfer his stash of instant ramen, Naruto sorted through the memories of the clones dispelled during the night. A couple of things stuck in his head and he made mental note to explore them further, but what really had his attention was Hiraishin no Jutsu. No way, this must be the jutsu that made Tsunade a legend. Spacetime ninjutsu? Oh, this is gonna take a lot of work. From what he could understand, the scroll was the rough outline of an incredibly complex teleportation ninjutsu. He thought he got the gist of what he needed to do, but more than half the notes were gibberish to him. Damn, I'm gonna have to learn Fuinjutsu theory. Won't that be fun? Naruto headed outside intent on creating his clone army for the day. While he might get stuck learning protocol today, at least his clones could get something done. Before he could summon them, he noticed one of his clones from last night standing in the middle of a barren training field. Noting it had his attention, the clone started bouncing up and down excitedly. Boss, you're gonna love this. Bunshin Daibukua. As soon as the clone uttered those words, Naruto was rocked back as the training field became a small crater. Well, that certainly is interesting, but I'm pretty sure I said no explosions last night. Twitching in irritation, Naruto summoned 200 clones. Alright guys, form up in groups of 20. Once the clones formed rank, Naruto began handing them their assignments for the day. Alright, first group, we need to massively improve our chakra control if we want to use the stuff from the library. I want you to do the leaf balancing exercise while you water walk. With a quick salute, the first group headed down to the small pond near the back edge of the compound. Group 2, practice the henge and kawarimi. Tausen's note said that when someone's mastered a jutsu, they can start to use it without hand signs. I want the ability to use a kawarimi without seals by the end of the day. Group 3, practice the C-rank jutsu we found yesterday. Group 4, calligraphy. Seals don't write themselves, you know. Group 5, find every book on Fuinjutsu theory in the library you can and start reading. Group 6, you get to work on the gardens. Try to keep most of it alive. Group 7, go move everything out of the old apartment, then I want an inventory of the house. Group 8, Kazen's Taijutsu scrolls, get practicing. Group 9, Kenjutsu training use the Kodachi. Last, but not least, Group 10. One at a time, practice that exploding clone thingy. In the already provided crater. Summoning one last clone, you. I want you to thoroughly reread the Hiraishin no Jutsu scroll. Every time one of theory clones dispels, I want you to read it. Damn it, I forgot. Creating a few more clones, you guys, Rasengan work. I want to be able to use it one-handed. Watching his clones get to work, Naruto vanished in a shunshin. Popping in with a quick morning bachan, Naruto swiftly dodged the paperweight, the sword at his head. Sadly, he didn't see the empty sake bottle that followed it. Tsunade felt a strong easing of her spirit as she watched the jar smash her insane grandnephew back into the wall behind him. Ha! Doubt he'll stop calling me granny, but man, that felt great. Trying to maintain a straight face as Naruto dragged himself back on his feet, Tsunade considered how to break the news. Deciding Naruto would probably just prefer it straight, she sighed. Alright Gaki, gonna cut straight to the chase. We don't have time for you to learn protocol, your fiancé is due today. Ignoring the sputtering and cursing her statement created, she tapped her chin in thought. There is a new problem too. Tsunade promoted her to Chunin, and you remain a genin. I can't just promote you, much as I would like to, but I have an idea. Seeing Naruto take a keen interest, she smirked, I'll give you a week to get ready, then I want you to fight the students of Asuma, Kurenai, Guy, as well your own Team 7. Bachan, that's crazy, Naruto grinned. I love it. Good to hear Gaki, now let's get down to the West Gate. If we get there with time to spare, we can annoy Izumo and Kotetsu. Temari was sick of riding in the carriage circumstances had forced upon her. She'd argued long and hard that she was still a chunin and she could walk, but Baki had maintained that they had to follow tradition, and traditionally, brides rode in the carriage. In addition to being extremely uncomfortable, the journey was taking twice as long as the last time she had made the trip. Reaching over, she ran her hand along the smooth metal of her mother's war fan. At least I was allowed to keep this. Laying her head back against the seat, Temari focused on calming herself. Today, she would no longer be a Tsunade shinobi, but one of the Leaf, and that hurt more than she would have believed. Despite how her little brother had been treated, she loved her village and has been proud to wear the symbol of the sand. She was jerked out of her thoughts as Kankuro stuck his head through the window. "Hey, Nachan. How you doing?" "I'm scared, little brother. I don't want to be married, especially not to a stranger from another village." "I totally agree, Nachan," Kankuro said. "Only thing I've heard is that you're marrying into a clan, but other than that, I've got nothing." Baki broke into the conversation. "Looks like we're here. Seems the Hokage herself came to welcome you, Temari, which is either a very good or a very bad sign." Tsunade stood with her arms crossed tightly over her chest, wrinkling the red and white fabric of her formal robes of state. With her were Shizune, Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura. Gritting her teeth in irritation, Tsunade whispered to Naruto. "If Kakashi doesn't show in the next 30 seconds, I want you to burn all his books." "Hi, Bachan," Naruto whispered back. "Your will shall be done." Torn between laughing and hitting him, Tsunade eyeballed Kakashi as he wandered up to the group just as the 4 Tsunade shinobi approached. His timing meant she couldn't say anything, but the look in her eyes warned Kakashi that this conversation was not going away. "Greetings and welcome to Kanahagakure no Sato. I am Tsunade Senju, Kodame Hokage, and I am most pleased to formally welcome you." Naruto faced Temari nervously, bowed and spoke the phrase Tsunade had hammered into his head while they were waiting. "I welcome you, Temari, my water is yours and I wish you shade and safety." Temari stared in complete shock. Not only had she not been expecting the traditional greeting of a Tsunade groom to his bride, she couldn't believe this was who she was to marry. Snapping out of her reverie, Temari bowed in return. "I greet you, Naruto. I am thankful for the honor. May you always find water and may our home be blessed with shade." She eyed him carefully. He seemed more serious than she remembered, more controlled. He had been a wild one during the exams, but now, he looked much more like the determined warrior she had seen defeat her brother. Naruto stiffened as Gaara shuffled near. His green eyes still bore the crazed look, but he seemed to have lost his murderous aura. "Hey Gaara, how's it going?" "Naruto Uzumaki," Gaara spoke tonelessly, "will you protect my Nachan as one of those precious people you told me of?" Naruto blinked, momentarily confused, then gave Gaara a small, warm smile. "I swear I will, Gaara, and I always keep my promises." Gaara simply nodded. "Thank you, for everything." "I'm not sure I follow all of that," Naruto said quietly. "I get thanking me for promising to take care of your Nachan, but what's everything else?" "You showed me true strength," Gaara replied just as softly. "I have chosen to follow your path. I will protect those precious to me. I'm happy for you." Naruto smiled. "Has it been hard?" "It is both harder and easier as time goes by. Ignoring the beast causes him to rage, but my mind is clearer." "It's hard to describe." "I understand," was all Naruto had to say. Most watching were confused. Naruto had already confided in Tsunade, so her grin was completely genuine, but Shizune was left wondering what the story behind this was. Temari and Kankuro knew what their brother meant, but he had not spoken to them in great detail about what had happened between him and the other Jinchuriki. Kakashi looked interested, but masked it behind his usual apathy quickly. Sasuke was glaring at Gaara, still angry that he had not been the one to defeat him. Sakura was nervous. She would never be able to forget the images of what he had done to Lee. Well, Tsunade said into the quiet that had settled over the group. I think Naruto should show Temari to their home, and I've made arrangements for the three of you in one of the hotels. Naruto interjected, Bachan, if it's alright, how about I take everyone with me? It's not like I don't have the room. Eyeing him, Tsunade shrugged, I suppose you can. Just remember, I want you in my office tomorrow at 9. We need to swear Temari in and place her on Team 7. I don't have an opening on my team. Kakashi said hurriedly. There are no open slots, Tsunade growled back, eye twitching in rage. If you weren't always late, you would have heard me explain that an hour ago. Secretly, Tsunade had hopes that the time spent together on a team would cause the two to bond. She didn't want the little Gaki stuck in a cold, loveless marriage. It was perhaps one of the few things he would not survive. She believed Temari and Naruto could make it work, but without an extra push, might not make the effort to try on an emotional level. Kakashi gave Tsunade one of his eye smiles. Well, that works, but I'll need some time to evaluate her and get their teamwork up to par. Should be a busy week for us. Naruto drooped. Achan, I'm kinda occupied this week. Didn't Kakashi-sensei get the message? Tsunade glared at the masked Jonin. No, because he was late. Kakashi, Naruto is training for an impromptu Chunin exam Monday. He will be fighting all the members of the Konoha 12 with the exception of Lee. Kakashi stared, eye-wide in shock. Hokage-sama, that is simply insane. Tsunade shrugged. It's what the Gaki chose. Naruto lead his fiancée and guests into the compound right as the last of the exploding cones decided to blow himself up. As much as he wanted to laugh, he found he had his hands full getting everyone to put their weapons away. Guys, it was just a stupid clone blowing himself up. Nothing to worry about, I swear. Once everyone settled, Naruto began a small tour. Alright, welcome to the Namikaze-Uzumaki estate. As you can see, we've got trees, some training grounds, a giant hole in the ground, stupid freaking clones, and gardens. Eyeing the general destruction, Naruto felt he had to add. Nah, Temari, I sure hope you garden better than I do, 'cause I think my clones really screwed that up. To her own surprise, Temari found herself agreeing. The clones had really messed things up. Looking around a bit more, Temari felt that so far, her new home wasn't too bad. She would have some privacy even if everything struck her as being a bit green. Tsunade didn't have much opportunity for gardening, but she had maintained a flower box of herbs in her room for several years. I know a little gardening, Naruto, she said. You have to remember, though, I come from a desert. All this green seems really odd to me. Naruto looked a little crestfallen, so she spoke quickly. Not that it's bad. I've always wanted a big herb garden. Alright guys, Naruto almost yelled in excitement, I want to show you where you're staying tonight. Leading everyone inside, he began to point out features of the house. Make yourselves comfortable in the sitting room. I'm not sure if everything works, but you're welcome to try out the television and kotatsu. The kitchen is through there, but it's not exactly stocked yet. There are plenty of rooms on the second floor, so take your pick, and if you want to train, the third floor is a practice room. He grabbed Temari gently by the wrist. Come on, I'll show you. As she was dragged up the stair, Temari had to admit that so far things weren't as bad as she had feared. The house really needed a woman's touch, but it was quite nice. She wasn't really sure what to make of her fiancé though. One moment he was hyper as hell, the next he was completely calm dealing with 4 spooked Tsunade shinobi, one of whom was Gaara for Kami's sake. Honestly, he was a puzzle. Leading her to the bedrooms, Naruto pointed one out, this is yours, mine is the one right next to it. Temari was a tad confused. I get my own room? She was less confused and more concerned when he turned to her with a completely blank face. Temari, I'm sure you're even less thrilled about this than I am. I want to get to know you better and I hope that one day we'll be happy, but now, we're practically strangers. I thought it'd be best if we learned to trust each other naturally. Temari admitted to herself that she was impressed with his analysis of the situation. He had even brought up some points she hadn't thought of. In Tsunade, it wasn't uncommon for a husband to demand his arranged wife be in his bed the evening of their marriage, and she had expected that behavior simply because she knew arranged marriages had nothing to do with whether or not two people loved or trusted one another. "Thank you, Naruto," was her heartfelt response. "Maybe this won't be so bad after all." Wanting to impress his guests, Naruto created a handful of clones and sent most off to read cookbooks and the rest to go grocery shopping. With time to kill, Naruto headed to one of the restored training fields to test what his clones had learned. Raising his hand, he was pleased to see a half-formed Rasengan. Definitely done by the end of the week, he thought with a smirk. Swapping places with a training dummy, he grinned. Sealless Kawarimi, check. He still had to use the ram sign for Hange, but that was at least a major improvement. Wanting to kill two birds with one stone, Naruto created clones to test both his new Kenjutsu and Taijutsu skills. Both appeared to be his mother's, and even with just the day's training with them, the styles felt natural. Finishing the last clone off with a particularly vicious cut that bisected the clone from groin to shoulder, he cringed. Wow, men must have dreaded fighting Kazan. The first elemental jutsu his clones picked made him snort in exasperation. Apparently, he really loved irony. Tsurano Jutsu, the same jutsu he had to save Kakashi-sensei from when they fought Zabuza. Trapping a clone in it, Naruto had to admit, the jutsu had its uses, but he would have to see about having enough water to use it. Moving on, he tried Daitapa. This one has potential. Watching the jutsu shred the trees he tested it on, he wondered if he had overloaded the jutsu. Rather than just blow things away, certain trees in the target area looked like they had been attacked with razors. Shrugging and filing that away for a different day, Naruto decided to test his last elemental jutsu. Remembering his internal promise after the last time he had barbecued himself, Naruto created some clones and backed off. Gokakyu no Jutsu. And won't the team be ecstatic that I can use on of his jutsu? This time, the additional practice of the clones paid off, and rather than create giant explosions, Naruto only created the smaller explosions he wanted. Satisfied with his day, Naruto barely had the energy to flop face first on his bed before he fell asleep. The next morning found Temari waking up to the smell of something delicious. Rubbing the sleep out of her eyes, she wandered down to the kitchen in her panties and a large t-shirt, forgetting that she was not back in Tsunade. Yawning and stretching, she grunted a morning to the shape at the stove. When she didn't get a response, she looked more fully at the figure making breakfast and felt herself freeze. It was Naruto, staring back with wide eyes, in just a pair of shorts. She thought the age difference would bother her, but he looked a bit older. Between that and his new behavior, she could easily forget she had several years on him. He's actually pretty cute. Naruto, for his part, had totally forgotten the omelet he was making as he stared at Temari. He might even owe Erosenin a small apology. Certainly this was worth seeing. With her hair down, sleep-tousled and framing her face, Naruto came to the sudden realization that he might just have gotten a really good deal with this marriage after all. They might have continued staring at each other for a while, except Kankuro had walked in and immediately burst into loud guffaws. Yo, Naruto, the omelet seems kinda black and smoky. Nechan, you might wanna go put on some pants before he burns down the house. Temari glanced down and let out a girlish shriek as she ran back to her room, mercifully unaware that Naruto's gaze followed her retreat closely. Kankuro, watching him, and seeing the blush on his face, began to laugh until Naruto flung a kitchen knife into the wall next to his head. Raising his hands in wordless apology, he decided to help out and set the table while Naruto disposed of the charred omelet. Kid, she is your fiancée, you're allowed to look, you know, he said, trying hard not to laugh. He was getting a stitch beneath his ribs. Rolling his eyes in irritation, Naruto shot back, gee, I'm gonna take relationship advice from the guy that wears makeup. It's war paint. It intimidates enemies, Runt, an infuriated Kankuro responded. What kinda shinobi is intimidated by makeup, Jidai? Naruto mocked back. With a completely nonplussed expression, Kankuro calmly stated, I don't think you can actually call me that, since I'm older. With a foxy grin, Naruto was prepared to return fire before he was interrupted. Would you assholes just shut up? Temari snapped as she reappeared, pulling her hair into her usual pigtails. Kankuro, knowing his sister's usual reaction to being embarrassed, was able to dodge when she swung her fan at him. Naruto, however, was unaware of his danger until the large iron fan connected with his head. Slamming into the wall, a scene very reminiscent of Jiraiya and Tsunade, Kankuro began to laugh when he heard the dazed boy murmur, "Wow, I think I'm in love." After some brief first aid, where Temari wrapped his injury while Kankuro laughed and even Gaara appeared to smile, Naruto and his guests stood in front of Tsunade in her office. Deciding it would be in everyone's best interest to gloss over the partial mummification of the groom-to-be, she approached Temari. Nervously maintaining eye contact with the elder Kunoichi, Temari barely heard what was said to her until the end. "Do you swear on the will of fire and your own honor allegiance to Konohagakure?" Reaching back and undoing her Sunagakure Hitayate, Temari calmed herself as she swore herself to her new village. "My honor, my life, I do so pledge." With a nod, Tsunade turned and stamped the registration sitting behind her on the desk. Pulling out a leaf Hitayate, she passed both items to the younger blonde. "With that done, you should know that the wedding ceremony will be in 2 months. Baki, you and Temari's brothers are welcome to visit at any time. I'll be granting you travel passes when we finish here. Are there any questions?" "Hokage-sama, what are my expected duties?" Temari asked hesitantly. Tsunade was impressed the girl was thinking that far ahead, but was surprised that Naruto's body language had suddenly switched from passive to protective. "Well, this is a surprise. I didn't think he would understand that, but apparently he does, and he wants to protect the girl. Seems the little Gaki will be just fine. Neither council has pressed the issue yet, but I expect there will be pressure in the future." Tsunade replied, hedging her answer somewhat. "Until the Gaki there matures, you'll probably be fine. You're both young, it'll be a while before the council is concerned." Temari nodded in understanding. At least she wasn't going to be forced to produce any children she didn't want. She hoped when the council finally came to a head about it, her relationship with Naruto would have had enough time to grow. She stiffened in shock when she felt Naruto grab her hand and gently squeeze in support. "Well, it seems he understands as well and agrees with me. I guess I really could have done a lot worse." Neither teen noticed that everyone else in the room noticed the little byplay. Everyone in the room wanted only the best for the two, and they were relieved that things seemed to be going well so far. "Temari, since your brothers are leaving tomorrow, why don't you go spend the day together?" Naruto offered with a warm smile. Temari couldn't help but return the smile. Such a warm heart this kid had. "I would like that, if you're sure it's acceptable." "Completely sure. If I had family I wasn't going to see for a while, I would want to spend what time I had with them. I'll be too busy training to spend much time with you today anyway. Thank you, Kanyu-kusha. We will see you at home this evening." With a bow, Temari left the office with her family. "If you don't have anything for me, Bachan, I have training I need to do." Seeing Tsunade shrug, Naruto used Shunshin to poof away. The past week had been fruitful for Naruto. Constant brawls with his clones in the trees and on the pond had drastically increased not only his chakra control, but his new taijutsu and kenjutsu styles. While far from mastered, both styles felt natural to him. He figured they were probably both at least mid-shunin, but he seemed to have hit a plateau with both. Probably need a real instructor to get better. Shrugging it off, he couldn't help but smile. He might not know many jutsu, but those he knew, he had mastered, or in the case of the Rasengan, almost mastered. He could do it one-handed now, but it still took him a few seconds more to form it than Arrow Sennin. Still, not too shabby, and the other jutsu he had down to either a single seal or no seals. That was going to come as a shock, and the best part was the team couldn't steal his jutsu. Using his new understanding of basic Fuinjutsu, Naruto had managed to increase his conditioning with resistance and gravity seals. Taking ruthless advantage of his healing from Furball, Naruto had more or less run himself into the ground. When he had released the seals this morning to adjust, he noticed that he was probably at least twice as fast as he had been, and he hadn't really gotten to test his strength after he destroyed the first training dummy accidentally. His attempts to use his father's jutsu had been interesting, to say the least. The first time he almost insisted on doing it himself, before his clone reminded him of the Great Fireball fiasco. Are clones supposed to be sarcastic? Still, he'd ended up being grateful after the first clone launched himself 300 feet in the air. How the hell did Tsunade survive creating this jutsu? Undeterred, Naruto had continued expending clones, and soon enough, the survival rate began to succeed the deaths. Eventually, the clones were surviving every attempt and Naruto had decided it was time to try himself. Focusing his chakra, Naruto searched for the beacon on the kunai. Feeling a faint pull, Naruto did the internal chakra manipulations from the scroll. With a flash of yellow, and how the hell did I see that anyway, he thought, Naruto found himself standing next to his target kunai. Naruto allowed himself a short childish victory dance, then settled down. Time to practice. Practice had reduced the time he needed to attune to a beacon, but it still took several seconds. Naruto was not about to complain though, a couple seconds to cross most any distance was not a bad trade-off. His father's notes had also answered the question he had on deploying the kunai. His peers were already frustrated with his Kagebunshin. He suspected that they were really going to dislike Shuriken Kagebunshin using Hiraishin kunai. Things with Temari were going as well as he could expect. She had a bit of a temper, but unlike Sakura, she at least tried to warn him off when she was getting angry, a side effect of having a dangerous brother, perhaps? He usually missed her clues and ended up with a metal fan being smashed across his head, but they were getting better. They were beginning to become comfortable with each other, sharing stories and jokes during Naruto's infrequent breaks from training. Temari was beginning to enjoy life in Konoha. She was surprised on her second day in the village. All the kunoichi of her generation swooped in to visit with her. Ino led the charge, but all of them, even Tenten, wanted to get to know their new comrade. Temari apologized, at least in regards to her excessive violence against the other kunoichi, and made it clear that it had not been personal and that she didn't want her hanging onto a grudge. All was forgiven when Tenten was allowed to handle the war fan. The other kunoichi all rolled their eyes as Tenten swung the fan around with stars in her eyes. She felt herself smiling as she watched. It was nice to have girlfriends. Being both a kunoichi and the child of the Kazekage had put her at a distance from everyone else. In the leaf, she was at the same level as everyone else, and she found the sensation of finally being equal surprisingly relaxing. It had also led to an interesting discovery. Apparently, Namake's men enjoy overbearing women. Tsunade had told her several stories of her mother-in-law and her legendary temper. She hadn't been inclined to believe it until she saw the boy she had watched beat her bother being floored by one of the weakest kunoichi from the exams. It was a revelation. Her betrothed may be smarter than she had believed, but she was going to have to be the one to keep the hyper-idiot in line. Still, she was beginning to think of him as her idiot, with a small smile. Naruto hummed to himself as he stood over the stove. He found that cooking was actually enjoyable for him and it kept Temari from poisoning him with her so-called food. He snickered when he recalled the time he told Temari that her cooking was probably the reason poor Gaara had been so homicidal. The joke was still funny half an hour later as he limped into the house. Finishing up, he called, "Temari, dinner is done." With a flash of blonde he could have sworn was Hiraishin no Jutsu, Temari was seated at the table. Tomorrow being an important day, Naruto had gone all out. Using info gathered from Ino, traded for a future favor to be decided, Naruto had prepared Temari's favorites. Kenshin soup and roasted chestnuts followed by a large chocolate cake. Naruto had some fun poking fun at Temari for drooling, but quickly shut up when her eyes promised retribution. Naruto had inadvertently discovered that shadow clones made great kitchen staff. He got to cook and make as much of a mess as he wanted and the clones had to clean it up. Temari tried to point out that with the clones, he would still get the memories of cleaning up, but Naruto was insistent. Best deal ever. After the clones cleared the table, Naruto walked over to Temari and in a display of boldness slightly shocking both of them, kissed her cheek. "I know I've been busy this week, but I wanted you to know that I'm glad you're here. Now, I need to go get some sleep, tomorrow will be a long day." Watching him head upstairs, Temari said, holding her cheek with a light blush. Being the daughter of a Kage, and the sister of Gaara, no one had ever kissed her before. Hope you liked this episode, the next one is coming soon.